When people say Monaco, what do people think of? People think of Formula One. People think of history. People think jewel in the Formula One calendar. But as of late, Formula One and the FIA have tried and tried and tried to make this race more and more interesting. And this year's no difference with the introduction of the mandatory two-stop strategy. But I think I've got a way that you can fix Monaco and make it interesting again. So let's talk about how we can make Monaco interesting again. What's going on, you guys? It is your boy, the American F1 fan, Eric Ringgold here, and we're back in its Monaco Grand Prix week. Formula One returns to Monaco, and unfortunately to the track that lends itself to no excitement almost at all, maybe except for qualifying. I think most people look forward to qualifying because that's basically the race for the weekend. But, you know, I've been thinking about it for some time about how could we fix Monaco to make it exciting again, to make fans enjoy when Formula One goes to Monaco. So as I was thinking about it, I know, I get it. It's history. It's a race that's been on the Formula One calendar for years. It's always been a part of the championship. But I think it's high time to now take this off and make Monaco a non-championship round. Now, like I said, I know there's history behind it, and I know that Monaco has always been a part of the championship, but it's just not competitive anymore. I mean, it's qualifying, like I said, is the most exciting part of the weekend because that sets the grid, but more times than not, that also is the finishing order for the actual race itself, unless you get some kind of actual carnage. So I say we move this to a non-championship round. Now, I know what people are saying. Well, if you move it to a non-championship round, what's the point? And I think let's do like what NASCAR does. And I know people are going to say, oh, typical American, let's make it look like NASCAR. No. What I'm saying is NASCAR does what they call their all-star weekend. They basically have all their cars, all their teams show up at the track. Now, this year, NASCAR ran at North Wilkes-Barre Raceway, which is a track that is synonymous with NASCAR. Basically what Monaco is to Formula One. People hear Monaco, they think Formula One almost immediately. So let's make it an all-star type weekend. Now, you may be asking yourself, what do I mean by that? Let's talk a little bit more about what I think should happen at the all-star weekend for. So this all-star weekend, we kind of see this even in IndyCar, is we have competitions. Just some fun, allows, everybody within the team to get involved and it kind of gives some bragging rights to teams. So one of the competitions that I thought of, or at least two of them, is pit stop competition. So, Formula One talks about how their crews are the fastest and, most dynamic. We see 2-second pit stops on a constant regular basis. Well, we can do two different competitions. So you can do the regular pit stop competition in which you involve the team and see who can perform the fastest pit stop. And even if you guys wanted to, we could add refueling back and make it, a little bit more of a throwback to, the times that we did have refueling in Formula One. I think that'd be kind of cool. And to see what the teams are able to do and see, who's really the fastest team in Formula One. And then you can also have where we have double stacking. We talk about it, and it happens very infrequently, but we do see at times where teams, double stack both teammates. One does a pit stop, and then immediately the other one comes in, makes a pit stop, and they're both on their way. We could have a competition where, both drivers make a pit stop and see who the best team is at, doing a pit stop while double stacking. I think that would be kind of cool. It's just a little competition between the teams and kind of gives bragging rights to the teams because, we don't necessarily see, that much bragging rights between, like engineers, the mechanics and stuff like that. I think this would be kind of cool, and it kind of gives bragging rights to a particular team's mechanics. And I think it's just fun in general. So this one does keep racing going at Monaco with this idea, and I think what we could do is have two groups of 10 cars, each team represented in both groups. So there's no like you can stack one group with all the really good cars and then one group with all the it basically evens itself out. Each, you basically have your roster, your first driver and your second driver. All the first drivers race in the first group, all the second drivers race in the second group. You have a 20-lap sprint race in each of these groups. So each group's going to run 20 laps. Your top three finishers move on to a final round. Now, you may be asking, well, how do you set the grid for the 20-lap group race? Reverse order. You start with the team with the lowest amount of points up at the front, the team with the most amount of points in the back. 20-lap race. You can change tires if you want. You don't have to change them if you don't want. Basically, no, set guidelines, kind of like how we do sprint races already as it is. So then your top three finishers from each group then move to the main race. It is a 35-lap sprint. And I just think it does keep a little bit of racing going in Monaco. I mean, especially with only, six, maybe if you make a top four, you can, in each group, you can have 8 cars race it out. But I think especially if you do reverse grid, which we've talked about for years in Formula One is, a potential way to fix, qualifying and, potentially, mixing up the grid a little bit more. I think this makes it a little bit of fun. You got the teams that typically aren't towards the front, up at the front. Now they have to develop a strategy to stay in front, whereas the teams that are typically up front are now having to race from the back, and they're having to show off their skill that we know those teams have. And so, then bringing it to the 35-lap race, if you want to make a mandatory pit stop somewhere in there, cool, that's fine. I don't mind that. But I think it does keep a little bit of racing, and it does, I think it makes it a little bit more exciting if you do that reverse grid. It just adds a little bit something extra, and I think it gives everybody something to fight for. And then moving on to the last idea I had, why not we do a fastest team? So what I mean by this is, so you're going to have one driver start on the main straight on the grid, and then your other driver will start at the exit of pit lane. So basically, your driver that starts on the grid does one complete lap. Once he finishes that lap, he will then do an in lap, like he would typically do on a pit stop. Then, once he gets into the pits, the team makes a pit stop. Once that pit stop is finished, then the teammate that's at the end of the pit lane, he can then go, does an out lap, and then does a full lap on his own, and then finishes the race basically at that point. So basically, each driver does two laps, let's say, because they're doing a full lap around the track and then they're doing an in lap or out lap, whichever the case may be. Fastest team wins. You can set up the car however you want. No rules. Basically make it, open to whatever, you think is going to make your car the fastest. And have a time trial that way. I think that could be also sorts of fun. And if you guys don't like those ideas, let me know in the comments section down below what ideas you guys think we could have for an all-star type weekend. Now, as a part of this all-star weekend, I think we need to do away with, our regular liveries. So I had 2 ideas on the livery. So most teams, when we get to Monaco, they run a throwback livery like we've gotten with McLaren in the past and we're going to get this year. But I would love to see each team either run a throwback livery to, any livery they wanted to from any team, because there are certain teams on the grid that weren't necessarily around when Formula One was in its heyday. So, let teams run whatever, livery from the past that they would want to. Or what you could do is have each driver design their own livery, maybe at the beginning of the season, knowing full well that this is going to be an all-star race in the future, let each driver come up with their own livery. They can have, yeah, you'll have your sponsors still on there, but, maybe they have callbacks to charities that they work with, or, certain, I don't want to say political leanings, but like more, statements that they would like to make, that they would like the world to see, within reason, obviously. I mean, there's some that just you can't have on a car, and you don't want to cause a stir. But you could either have the teams do a throwback livery or have the drivers make their own liveries. I think that's kind of fun. Like, we get to see some creativity from the teams or the drivers themselves. I mean, we already have basically every driver has their own logo, has their own font with their numbers. They sell their own merchandise with their logos and numbers and whatnot. Why don't we let them have a day where they get to have their car look, basically how their attitude is? Now, regardless of whether or not we do an all-star weekend or we don't, I think the biggest thing that I think most fans can all agree upon is we need some kind of design of a new layout. I know so many people out there have put out their own ideas for potential, track designs that we could have in the future for Monaco. And I think it's about time that we do change this track up somewhat. I mean, it's gotten to a point where it's gotten stale, and maybe, we take out some areas or we add in some spots, something to kind of change up the way we look at Monaco when we look at the Monaco Grand Prix and the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. So I think changing up the track some way, making a new design, I think has got to be key, whether you were to do an all-star type weekend or if you're going to keep racing and keep this race as a part of the championship. The design has got to change. And then finally, my last idea, and this is an idea not only for Monaco, but I think just in general for Formula One. I think they need to have mandatory mandatory open pits where allows fans. You don't need to make an extra purchase of a pit lane pass. You just have the pit lanes open, or you have a designated spot for each team on the Formula One grid. You have a designated spot on the track where the teams can set up their cars, can set up their team, their drivers, their team principal, maybe anybody else that you think that fans would want to meet and greet with and maybe get autographs from. You have them set up either on the track or in pit lane, and you just open it up to the public. Quit charging so much extra for all this extra stuff. You want fans to enjoy Formula One. You want fans to come to the races. You want the casual fans to get into Formula One. Well, what better way you could do that by just literally opening up the pit lane, or like I said, finding a designated part of the track where, fans can join their team, see the cars up close, see their drivers up close, maybe even see their favorite team principal up close, and just rub elbows with, the teams that they've fallen in love with. I mean, me for one, if I were to go to a race, let's say Coda did this. If Coda did this and I were there for that weekend, I would love to go meet the Haas drivers. I would love to go meet Io Komatsu. I would even love to go see some of the other teams and just, be able to be up close and personal with the teams, the cars. But I think even better at Monaco, where Monaco is known as a, famous, city or famous country, and, only the celebrities get to go there. The casual Formula One fans that do go to Monaco, let's give them something a little extra without having to charge an arm and a leg. But guys, let me know what you guys think of my idea for making Monaco better. Let me know that in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your ideas how we can make Monaco better. Even if mine you don't agree with, that's fine. I would love to hear your ideas on how to make Monaco better. Guys, hit that like button. It helps get this video out to more and more Formula One fans. And guys, if you are new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. We're only 55 subscribers away from that big, 1,000 subscriber goal. So hit that subscribe button for me. It helps me out immensely, and it would mean the world to me. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. And guys, for the American F1 fan, I'm Eric Ringel, signing off.